So good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the second of these forums that we're putting together during the remote learning period. I'm Bill Lapini, Superintendent of SAU 21, joined this morning again by David Hobbs, our Assistant Superintendent, Caroline Arakilian, our Executive Director of Student Services, Matt Ferrara, our Business Administrator, and Rhonda Evans, who works with me as my assistant in the office and has taken on a lot of other duties during this situation. So let me go over a couple of pieces of sort of architecture first. We're going to sort of make some opening comments. I'm going to try as best I can to take you through some of the last week. Although in this world where time seems to have lost its meaning some days, that was hard to do as I put some of that together this morning. I'm going to ask each of our senior staff people to make some comments about issues that they're working on, and then we'll take questions. So the way we'll do that is through the Q&A button, if you will, at the bottom of your screen. I believe it's there. So if you submit questions in that way, then when we get to a certain point, I'll go through and sort of moderate the questions, answer those that I can, and farm the others out to members of this great team. So before I start, I want to thank these people for their great work. I want to thank our teachers and EAs and support staff for their amazing work during this time. I am more impressed with the people in SAU 21 districts every day. And I think you're going to hear some of the reasons why this morning in some of what we talk about. And I also want to thank our families for your support, encouragement, kind words that I know you've sent to teachers, administrators, and us. During this time. I said the other day that to a reporter that I think too often we sometimes use the expression building a plane while we're flying it, but if that phrase ever applied, it's now. And we appreciate your support and encouragement and understanding as we're trying to do that. So with that said, let me launch into a couple of points first, and then I'll go to Dr. Hobbs, then Dr. Arakilian, and then Mr. Ferrara for comments. So some of the key pieces for us during the past week were first to get some sort of a calendar out to our staff and to parents so that we knew what this was going to look like now that we're going to be in this environment at least through May the 4th. And I want to address that piece as well. We put out a calendar which assumes at least May 4th, but which actually would carry us through the remainder of the year should we remain in a remote learning environment until then. If we go back, I've had some parents email me, if we were to go back on May 4th, we could pick up our calendar largely intact in the way it was meant to be in a physical plant. But this calendar was largely after May 4th intended to get us through the rest of the year in a remote environment. To that point, we were told yesterday by the commissioner that the governor has actually said publicly that he believes there's a 50-50 chance that we will come back on May the 4th. Some of you may know that there are already, I believe, 8, if the number hasn't gone up, states that are going to some sort of remote or closed environment for the remainder of the year, including Vermont. And so we're hoping, and we've been told by the commissioner that the governor will give us an update, give us that information as soon as possible, because what we know is it's important to get that information to our teachers and to our parents. So that calendar's out. It specifies largely a 4-day instructional week. We thought it was really important for teachers to have time to do planning, for teachers to have time to do professional learning, for teachers to have time to meet. And so that was the point of going to that calendar, which then works through the April vacation. We put out a set of remote learning expectations this week in collaboration and in sharing with our Teachers Association and our EA Association, CESPA. We talked that through with them. And those largely spell out what this looks like. And really, as I said in my letter, encourages us to move toward at least some opportunity for real-time contact with students every week. And that is our goal. That's what we're working towards. Some people have already eclipsed that goal, and others are working toward it because they're learning new platforms and learning new ways of delivering instruction. By the way, let me back up 1 second and say that that calendar was included in a letter I sent, and that letter, I believe, is posted on our website. We have not taken that calendar and formulated it into what you would know as a school calendar yet, but that's in the works. Another issue that we've been working on this week that Dr. Arkelian, I'm sure, will talk about is Wi-Fi access for families who didn't have that available or didn't have robust access available. And what continues to be on our plate, on our priority list, is making sure that people have meals where they need them. And we've seen a considerable increase in those numbers over the last week, and we think that's great. We hope that people continue to take advantage of that. The other thing that I think we've started to work on a little bit more robustly is this idea of some trips that were scheduled for the rest of the year, and making sure that our schools and our families get money back where they put deposits down. We still have, I think there are 2 or 3 of those trips where we're having a little bit more difficulty recovering the full amount, but we're going to continue to work with those vendors, continue to work with the commissioner. If necessary, the commissioner has made available to us the possibility of working with the Attorney General to access those funds, and we will continue to pursue that. The coming week is going to be largely about grading and reporting. There are conversations going on with our principals and teachers now about grading and reporting and what that looks like in this environment. And real-time contact between teachers and students. That's, as I said earlier, a priority for us, and we want to continue to support teachers in accessing these environments and being able to do that. So that's a great part of our work, Dr. Hobbs' work, Dr. Arkelian's work, our curriculum coordinators in our building, their work. And we're going to really quickly turn our attention this week, because I recognize there were a lot of questions last week relative to seniors, our graduating seniors, and questions about things like graduation, et cetera. And we are going to go at those issues again with an assumption, at least in our mind for the moment, because it's the only assumption we can draw, that we would not return to our physical plants this year. We don't have that as information from the governor's office yet, but we have to plan. And so I know that's a real priority for Mr. McGowan. And to that end, we've invited Mr. McGowan to come on with us next week for this particular hour to talk about those issues relative to the high school, but largely, I will say, relative to graduating seniors. So we'll be putting out some information on that, but we're looking for Mr. McGowan to be joining us next week to help talk about some of those things with us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Hobbs again. What we're going to do is I'm going to have Dr. Hobbs, Dr. Arkelian, Mr. Farrar make some comments, and then we will go to the questions which are being submitted. If you have a question, through that Q&A link at the bottom of the screen, and then we'll start through and try to answer your questions. Okay, Dr. Hobbs.
Sure. Can everybody hear me? We're good. Thank you. I want to give you guys an overview, broad strokes of where we are with respect to teaching and learning at the SAU. Dr. Lupini is right. We needed to get the calendar in place and provide some structure for our families, for our teachers, for our kids. And now that we've got that in place, we're really starting to focus in on what teaching and learning looks like in a remote environment. So to that end, we've published expectations for teachers in terms of classroom time, in terms of how much time should be spent for students working on their projects. We have put down an expectation of face-to-face interaction between teachers and students. That doesn't necessarily have to be content related. It can just be a connection, a check-in. In my opinion, the SEL stuff, the human connection, is the priority there, and the second place finisher is the delivery of content. With regard to scheduling, we've had we're running the gamut in terms of school schedules and team schedules. We do have some schools that have set up a school-wide timetable when students are supposed to be doing learning and when they're supposed to be taking recess, etc. Others, based on flexibility of families and a lot of really good reasons, have been a little bit more flexible in their scheduling processes. With respect to data, we're still collecting on a weekly basis participation rates from all our students. We're also tracking time spent working by teachers, and we're also trying to get feedback from our teachers on a weekly basis about what we can do better to support them. So that's been an important initiative. Believe it or not, certification rules have not changed at the New Hampshire state level. So we are in conversations with the DOE. We're certifying our teachers the way we normally would, and we're actually able to attribute a lot of this remote learning experience as professional development. So we've been given pretty good leeway by the DOE to take care of that. Grading and assessment, I know Dr. Lupini spoke about it briefly. That's exactly right. We're in the position now where we've got broad strokes ideas of what we want to do, and obviously my priorities on this are equity, something that's non-penalizing for our students, and something that's going to be consistent for the SAU. So we have early next week, we have meetings with our principals to kind of vet out solutions there, and we'll come out with a formal plan early next week, we hope. And I think that's pretty much it for me. Use of technology, we've had some really good use of Seesaw, Google Classroom. We're using Google Meets, and we're actually able to make anonymous phone calls to our students so that students don't get our cell phone numbers through Google, which has been very helpful as well, just for that audio contact. We're trying to streamline the technology as much as possible and make sure that all families can access. So with that,
thank you.
Thank you,
Dr. Hobbs. Dr. Arkelian?
Thank you. So I'll touch a little bit about our meal distribution program and Wi-Fi in special education. So we continue to distribute meals out of Seabrook and Winnicott on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We're going to be requiring our staff to be wearing masks from now on due to the new CDC guidance. We watch that guidance very closely to make sure that we're following it and taking the steps needed to keep the community and our staff safe. For that meal program, it's not something that you need to sign up for. It's not something you need to qualify for free and reduced lunch or any kind of state benefits. Any family in our community can go to either Winnicott or Seabrook to pick up meals. And also we have a delivery service. So we're delivering meals throughout our communities. There are 2 routes that leave the Seabrook School at 9 a.m. on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We're going to be posting a new delivery route, and we'll get that information out to you Sunday evening and before the Monday morning delivery. Because we're trying to streamline it as much as possible, because it is true that we keep adding more and more families, and the number of meals that we're distributing is increasing each time. So we want to make sure that as many families who want to participate can participate in that. So we really like as close to full participation as possible. And then as far as Wi-Fi access, we really want to make sure that families have access to reliable Wi-Fi. We have a no-cost Wi-Fi list posted on our websites. So on the SAU21.org website and the district websites, there are no-cost options on there as far as Xfinity hotspots. Many of the cell phone carriers have lifted fees and restrictions to use your cell phone as a hotspot device. So there are a lot of new options out there. So I encourage families to take a look at that if you do not have reliable access to Wi-Fi, as students are, going through remote instruction. But in addition, we do have some hotspot devices now that families can pick up, or we can deliver them through our free lunch delivery program. And then as far as special education and social emotional learning, we are reaching out, providing specialized instruction, related services, and checking in with students in collaboration with the regular ed teachers. So this is something where, we consider it a priority to be in touch with kids and to support them however we can, given this different modality of instruction. And then as far as social emotional learning, because we're in this remote instruction setting through May, we are taking a new focus on social emotional, because we want to make sure that everyone can sustain this kind of learning and teaching, even though it's completely different than just a matter of weeks ago. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Erkelian. Mr. Farrar?
So as I had mentioned last week, from a facilities perspective, our primary goal is to maintain sanitized and healthy buildings. That way we can prepare for the reentry of our students and staff once schools are able to open. As such, we did contract a professional remediation company who sanitized and disinfected all of our SAU 21 buildings. That occurred this past week. Additionally, we are limiting access to all of our buildings. And this is with the exception of some essential personnel, such as food service to provide meals for our families, as well as some, facilities staff for basic maintenance. With the extension of our May, with the closure to May 4th, we did recognize the need for teachers to enter the building to pick up any necessary teaching material. So we did open the building in a very controlled manner, in a scheduled fashion, for teachers to enter the building yesterday, Friday, to get those teaching materials. Finally, as I mentioned last week, we will be having that professional remediation company come back to sanitize and disinfect all of our buildings. And this will occur 48 hours to 72 hours prior to students and staff return. So our main priority from a facilities perspective is to ensure that all of our buildings are disinfected and safe for our students and staff to return. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Let me just mention a couple other things quickly that I know that are in Matt's wheelhouse on this, that people have asked us about. So we know from our conversations with the commissioner that there are going to be grant dollars available for this situation. Some out of the federal act, some in other ways. And we're just getting now into starting to understand some of the particulars of that. And the three people who are here will actually be very, very involved in helping our individual districts figure out what we can use those dollars for to support our kids. And somebody asked me the other day about hiring. I mean, so there's everything associated with this. And at some point we will return. And when we return, we have to run schools, right? And we have openings for next year, those kinds of things. You should know that hiring processes are going on. Interviews are going on. Advertising of positions that are open for next year are going on. I'm going to have my first finalist interview with a candidate from one of our buildings early this coming week. So we have a way of doing all of that remotely to make sure that when we return, that we are fully staffed and that we have people in positions to do the job when we reopen schools. So, and that whole piece largely falls within Mr. Farrar's responsibilities as well. The one other thing I want to mention is that we have board meetings going on. If you look at our website, you'll see that we have, thanks to the governor's executive order, on this, we've been able to figure out a way to do board meetings in very much the fashion that you're seeing here. I joked with some people the other night that it appears that we have better attendance at some of our board meetings using this format than we sometimes do normally. So please join us for those individual school board meetings and meetings of our joint board, where we brief them much as we're briefing you now on the issues that people are dealing with. And so with that, unless I missed something, unless somebody else wants to add one other piece, I'll turn to the questions. Okay. All right, let's do that. So there's a couple of comments here from people thanking us, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate that and how much our teachers and principals appreciate hearing from you about the work that they're doing. And so I would just say right back at you, thank you so much for understanding as we have tried to get these things up and running, as we have tried to figure some things out that we've not dealt with before. And our goal up front was to communicate, right? And so that's why we're here this morning. That's a number of the things that we've tried to do in terms of regular letters, and I know our principals have done as well. So thank you very much. And there's a comment here, Dr. Arkelian, about the meals. Thank you for that. And again, we just hope that more people, if that's of help to you in any way, we hope that you will take advantage of it. So the next comment question is about a student with an IEP. I see her weekly updates and she's buried in work in math and feels overwhelmed. Can an adjustment be made to tone down the amount of work? These times are stressful enough without being bogged down with the work. So Dr. Arkelian, can I turn to you on what exactly it is that we're doing to support students who have IEPs, and maybe any comments you might have relative to this question?
Absolutely.
Thank
so
you.
there are a few things that we could do here. We can take a look at the class. We can be in touch with the special ed teacher. In some IEPs, there are options for modification for the number of math problems that students need to do, depending on the disability and the plan. For students, it could be due to processing speed that it's appropriate for a student to have their work modified. So this is definitely something, for any family who feels like, this, the amount of work and the student has been identified for special education services, that they can be in touch with not only their special ed teacher, but also their regular ed teacher, because it's not the case that we are trying to replicate school. And we understand that it's a different setting, it's a different environment, and students who are receiving services, we need to adapt accordingly for them. So I would definitely reach out to your special ed teacher and the math teacher about that, so they can work on different solutions with you.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
The next question is, I appreciate you all talking about an increase in real-time communication. Maintaining a homeschool environment is extremely difficult when trying to balance both parents working and providing instruction. Yes, we hear that from our staff members as well. Can you elaborate on the goal for real time, I'll say, learning in the 5th grade and other grades? I said up front, our goal right now that we're working on with people is a minimum for each teacher to have contact with their kids once a week. That means different things across different schools and different grade levels, because, for example, high school teachers have 4 or 5 classes, middle level teachers have some number of classes. A 5th grade teacher, for the most part, has that one group unless they're moving kids. So David, do you want to talk at all about the specifics in terms of the plan that we've put out and that we're working toward?
Sure. Yeah, this has been a perennial conversation for us. It's just kind of been nonstop, and really kind of where we are is trying to thread the needle. Obviously, we have some parents who say, why can't we just be synchronous all day and run a regular school schedule? We have other parents that are, we've got people working at home, we've got responsibilities at home that need that flexibility in their instruction. So we're trying to find the sweet spot between kind of rigid expectations for a schedule and giving kids flexible time to learn. So to that end, yeah, we've set the expectation that every student should at least hear from a teacher in real time once per week. And for me, like I said on the top of this whole thing, that's about human connection in a time of uncertainty, as much as it would be with regard to content delivery. Another point that I'll just bring up really briefly is the Friday schedule. What we hope we can leverage in this Friday schedule is the opportunity for teachers to coordinate and to meet up and to talk about how we're connecting with kids and find some creative ways to do so. That might look like a win block, what I need block, or it might look like an advisory kind of a thing. We're trying to explore all those options.
Great, thank you. And that's very similar to the next question, which says, how often will there be live interaction, instruction, morning meeting, daily, once a week? It's the expectation is now that we're working toward minimum of once a week. How have you worked on a plan for children on IEP who have extended school year? So I should have mentioned this as another one of those issues for the coming weeks, right? So yes, and what we're talking about right now are all issues, I guess I would say all issues related to what we need to do as a result of this remote learning environment when we return, whenever that is, right? And so what does extended school year look like? What does summer school in general look like? What does the beginning of next school year look like? And everything in between. So all of those pieces are on the table. And Dr. Achillian, I know you've had at least some conversation with the directors about extended school year in this environment and what we're thinking. Do you want to add a comment here?
Sure. So as far as a plan, ESY will definitely happen. So some parents are wondering, in remote instruction, will there even be ESY? Will there not be it? Everything's on the table. Everything's different. There will be ESY for students who for the special education team has determined that they require ESY, so they don't lose skills and they don't regress over the summer. So that is still something that we will be planning, ESY, and certainly we are thinking about other ways that we can support students going forward, whether that's in the summer and or in the fall for students who may have lost some skills due to the remote instruction time.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
A comment thanking us for the forum. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate that. So in this comment says, let's see, in Seabrook Elementary, report cards and progress notes were not sent out prior to the building closure. Does anyone know if these were able to be gathered to be sent when the building opened 4/3? If school does not reopen, will there are a bunch of questions here. Will last quarter's marks progress notes be sent home? The special education director is retiring as the school year is ending. So let me address that. I said something earlier about hiring. We have actually, because those processes were already in place, we have actually already hired the director of guidance for Winnicott High School for next year because we have someone retiring. We've hired the curriculum coordinator for Winnicott High School because of someone going back to their previous responsibilities. We have hired new guidance counselor for Seabrook Elementary School because of retirement, and we've hired a new special education director for Seabrook schools. I know that those people are engaged because those people who are being hired are engaged because I get emails from them at least a couple times a week, and I've been in meetings with them, with many of them already in the last week. So the issue of transition and all for those people, I would say to you, is not one to be worried about. I'm very confident that those two people who've been hired in Seabrook are already getting themselves up to speed and already have been joining in a number of things that we're working on while making sure they exit their current jobs in the right fashion. I did hear there was a comment in our conversations about report cards. David, do you want to?
Right. So Stephanie Lafreniere, she's in the audience, so I'm getting texts from her. Yeah, they do have a plan for distribution of trimester 2 report cards to be coming out in the coming weeks, quote unquote.
Great. Thank you.
I can add to that if.
Please.
May I add to that?
Please.
So, and we historically send out progress reports at the same time as report cards. So with parent permission, we are looking to for those schools who have not finished progress reports, because it was right at that time of the trimester change when we first left the buildings. The directors are working on, and the case managers are working on completing those progress reports, downloading them. And then with parent permission, we can share those with you via email. So that's what we would like to do. And your school will be in touch with you about that. If not now, then definitely by or before the end of the year. And I also want to address, I think this question actually, there's a second half of it because looks like
there it is. Okay.
Going there. So I can address the IEP meetings part.
Right.
IEP meeting, how will IEP meetings be scheduled for the end of the year? Who will be setting this up with minimal administration presence due to these circumstances? So we continue to set up IEP meetings, and we hold them just like this: Zoom, Google Meet. But of course, that is something that is with upon parent agreement. So it could be that your special ed teacher, your case manager, or the director is reaching out to you to schedule meetings. We have a lot of meetings for 8th grade transition. All of those families will be contacted so we can schedule those meetings if they haven't already been held. And with your permission, we share documents like IEPs and all the other signatures that we get in meetings, and we are doing it through email at this point. So sharing documents, if that's something you're comfortable with and you have access to, and then you can respond to those proposals via email. So we're doing everything we can to schedule as many meetings as we can, have those conversations with families, and then get your consent and permission to move forward so we can have plans in place for the remainder of this year and the beginning of next year. But we're still scheduling meetings. If you haven't heard from the person who usually gets in touch with you for meetings, feel free to send an email, whether that's an administrative assistant or special ed teacher or the director, because then they can let you know where you fall on the list to getting scheduled.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I had a question somehow get bumped up, but I'll do that one. So this is a question about the trips, and this is particular to Seabrook Middle School. And so what I would say there is so it's really a two-part question. One is about getting the money back from the travel agent and working with the travel agent. And the second is a particular to the way fundraising worked around that trip. So I'm gonna try to answer the first part here. So this person says, I understand the staff is working with this company. I've contacted them myself and keep getting a runaround. So what I would do is I've talked with the principal at Seabrook Middle School as recently as yesterday, and know that she was going to have a phone conversation with someone from that company, a person in authority in that company. Our stance is still that we should get, exactly as you've said here in your question, that we should get a 100% refund, even for people who did not purchase the insurance because we couldn't go. We weren't permitted to go by the governor's order. And that is indeed what the commissioner's letter says, that we have provided to the companies that we're working with. And so that's a work in progress. We haven't spoken since that phone call took place yesterday, but we're on this early this week again. And I have spoken with the principal around this concept that there were people who did individual fundraising. And we'll continue to work with her to provide you all with an answer on that as soon as we possibly can. Our goal right now is that we do not believe that any of our trips, that our schools or our parents should be out any money as a result of these trips being canceled, because as you've said here in your question, we didn't cancel them. Massachusetts model is having teachers promote project-based learning projects in some districts. Maybe a good addition for honors level students. And David, there's a like question here about what students are doing on Fridays and what teachers are asking students to do with that time. So could you answer that for me?
Sure. So we've set up Fridays as students can have time for work completion. However, we've set the expectation that new content shouldn't be delivered on Fridays. And let me take a step back on that in terms of the Friday approach. So parallel with this idea of face-to-face instruction is a sense that this, running a classroom like this brings up a lot of challenges, technical challenges, classroom management challenges, liability challenges. So we've been working with our teachers to find a way to make it work for everybody. And just a plug right here for the union. We've actually been in close contact with the union about, it's reasonable for a teacher to ask, what exactly are you asking me to do here? So they've been supportive and flexible in this time. But that's kind of, in my opinion, that's the rationale, the teaching and learning rationale for those Fridays, for teachers at least. The other side for students is, I think, week 1 and week 2 came for this remote learning, and we all just kind of went a little nuts. We had a lot of students doing a lot of work and a lot of teachers putting in a lot of time. So again, we're finding the spot, finding getting our feet underneath us in terms of amount of time, expectations, and some of the classroom concerns around liability and use of technology.
Thank you. Here's a question specific to the high school about someone who's a freshman has had one teacher reach out face-to-face and participation was optional. So, right, one of the reasons, what you've spelled out here is one of the reasons we've set those expectations that we're working toward, right, of the minimum of one time a week per class in this case, that there would be some type of real-time interaction. And so my hope is that you see that change over the coming weeks. That should obviously work more toward however the building is putting into place those expectations that we've put out. There's a question about the high school survey, which I must admit I've not seen. The question is, I've not seen the survey, but what information are they looking to gather from these surveys? I think it's largely around time, but have either of you seen it?
My understanding is, and this is secondhand, that my understanding is it's around how much time is being spent on assignments, what are the pressures, what are we doing well, and what kind of feedback can our students give us. I can't speak to parents who are not receiving it. I believe it's sent directly to students. It's a great question to follow up with Mr. McGowan next week.
Yep. Oh, here's a note. So just for people's information, the Seabrook Community Action Agency at 146 Lafayette Road has a grab and go system of outside tables. Please feel free to mention this. Also, fuel electrical assistance apps will continue to be taken through the end of May. Thank you for that comment. Glad to pass that along. And they're jumping around a little bit on me, but we're seeing how good the superintendent is at this format this morning. Okay. Can you provide more clarification in regard to the new schedule reasoning? I think we've sort of gone through that. Will you provide direction to teachers to make sure assignments are given? I lost it on the Fridays, and I think Dr. Hobbs has largely addressed that. Let's see. Thank you, SAU leadership team, teachers, special educators. Thank you, Representative. We really appreciate that. Thank you. And I see one more here with frequency minutes in an IEP. Now that we're on a 4-day week, how does that work with time not serviced? And that says for Dr. Arkelian. So Dr. Arkelian?
Sure. So for minutes in the IEP, we are It depends. That's kind of a long answer. It depends. So for some students, it may be that they need more minutes than what are in the IEP. However, for other students, it may mean less. I know that we've talked to our related service providers, so the speech and language and OT and PT, the behavior analysts and social workers and counselors. These services that are appointment-based, typically in the school setting, they're working hard to provide different kinds of services to kids. So some of it is FaceTime, some of it is preparing activities, sending to the student ahead of time, and then touching base via reach out, a certain number of times during the week. But as far as the 4-day model now, I think that question is more about the 4-day model. While it is true that, special education, we need to support students when all students are receiving instruction. So that would be a change. It would be 4 days. There are opportunities for our service providers to reach out to kids on Fridays. So while, as Dr. Hobbs mentioned, it's not new instruction on Fridays, it is a time that our staff can reach out or that students can reach out to staff and check in regarding work that they need to make up or if they have additional questions. But certainly we also, it's true, we also need to adapt to the 4-day model.
Thank you. You mentioned individual schools running meetings similar to this. Will parents be notified or scheduled? I'm certain that if they do, what we've said we're going to try to do here, and we'll try it next week with the high school principal, is to invite some people on here with us. I know other people have different ways set up, whether they're office hours or whatever, to contact principals or other administrators, and I would take advantage of those. Certainly, if people are setting up ways for people to communicate with them, I'm sure that they're advertised well. And if you can't get an answer to a question like that, let us know, and we'll work with the principal. Yes, here, yeah, that this is a very specific, similar question. Yes, Marcia, we're going to have the high school principal join us next week. And we haven't talked about it yet, but we've looked at the idea of having some others join us, and that'll be a topic, how we go about doing that at our principals meeting on Tuesday. We've made a commitment to do these throughout the length of the closure, whatever, the remote learning period, whatever that period is. We will continue to make sure that we're available. And one other thing, let me say before we conclude, because that's the last question, but if someone wants to jump in with another one, we're happy to try to answer that. You can contact us at any point by email. So we would always prefer, of course, that you try to work with your classroom teachers first, and that you work with the administrators at your school level after that, and their emails I'm sure you have, or you can access. But you're always welcome to try to contact any of us. Our emails are all at SAU21.org with the first letter of our first names and our last names prior to that. So, for example, mine is B Lupini at SAU21.org, and you can always email me or any of us, and we will work to get the right people to answer your questions. So I'm looking at my my colleagues, and is there anything anybody needs to or would like to add before we conclude today?
I would like to add one point. I answered one question. There was a question as far as Southampton families receiving meals and where should they go. They're welcome to pick up meals at Seabrook, that's closer, or Winnicott. So either way.
Great. And a phone call coming tomorrow night with additional detail about the meals.
That's right.
Yep. Dr. Hobbs,
yeah, I gotta do
you
it.
Want to say something?
I just a quick note to thank you, Dr. Lupini, because I'm getting a bunch of texts. Just thank you for this process, and I know it's a lot of work to spearhead this. So people wanted me to reflect that.
Thank you. I have a great team. This is a great group of people that I have a chance to work with every day, and I'm thankful for them. And so the last comment I want to make to people is just to take care of yourselves. If I've heard anything the last week from different meetings that I've been in, is just how important it is that we take care of ourselves and each other through this very difficult time. I know it's stressful. I know there's news every day that is sometimes difficult to hear, and so whatever we can do to help with that, please reach out and let us know. Okay, and thank you for joining us again this morning. And if we don't see you at a meeting or something in between now and then, we'll be here next Saturday morning for another of these sessions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.